Salam alaikum. Thank you, Laura. Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished guests, Prime Minister, thank you very much for being here this evening. I am truly flattered to be part of this most fascinating conference. And I'd like to start by applauding the organizers for making me and all of we visitors feel so much at home. This is a very rare opportunity for a filmmaker, and so I doubly appreciate your invitation. It's particularly satisfying that shortly we will be screening Journey to Mecca. You saw a brief clip, which was partly shot, as you know, in your country, in Saudi Arabia. The film tells the story of the Hajj, as seen through the eyes of the famous 14th century traveler Ibn Battuta. And last night, I took a moment to walk outside the hotel, and it was a beautiful, cool, desert evening. And I looked up and I could see stars and the moon, and I was immediately struck that these were the same stars and the same moon that Ibn Battuta was looking at nearly 700 years ago. And I was really humbled by the thought. And it really struck me how on his journey to Mecca, Ibn Battuta encountered the same extraordinary warmth and hospitality that you, our hosts, have demonstrated to all of us attending this conference. We in the West have a lot to learn from your culture of welcome and hospitality, and I sincerely want to recognize you for this part of my education. As you have just seen from the clips, many of our films deal with the issues of cultural diversity. Journey to Mecca is no exception. The production of this film was truly an historic exercise in cross-cultural collaboration. And I'm pleased to say that we experienced the same very warm welcome during the production of this film as we have, all of us, received here in Riyadh at this conference. So not only is your hospitality remarkable, but it's very consistent and has lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm often asked how I went from being a chemical engineer to being a film producer. Well, my first chemical engineering job was as a sewage analyst in Stockholm, Sweden. Looking at some of the films that come out of Hollywood these days, some might say there's not a huge leap between the two jobs. Anyway, as a bad sewage analyst, poor at my job, I sort of failed upwards for many years. And after unsuccessful stints as an engineer, a bad diesel engine salesman, I then became an undistinguished investment banker. And J.K. Galbraith once said that banking is a career from which no man ever fully recovers. And I guess I didn't, but my partial recovery started at the age of 35 when I started to finance movies. Now, I've always loved stories and storytellers, and I think that is what attracted me to the film business. When I was a child, I had a very bad stutter, and my father encouraged me to overcome my embarrassment by telling stories, and in particular, by telling jokes. One of his favorite jokes was about the stuttering door-to-door Bible salesman who would knock on a potential buyer's door and start his sales pitch with, "Would you like to buy a Bible from me Or should I read it to you? I used this approach to sell many movies in Hollywood in later years. My first film project was Watership Down, an animated film about a family of rabbits battling a group of developers, and it was based on a hugely successful British book. And as luck would have it, the film was very successful, and one project simply led to another. And the mainly British film directors and producers I worked with at the time operated strictly outside the Hollywood system, and we've continued to do that. They always tried to make films that they wanted to make because they believed in them, and not because they fit into any preconceived commercial Hollywood pre-branded formula. And I think it's a sad commentary on today's industry that over 75% of studio films released this past summer were sequels, remakes, or adaptations of previous films. Today, the media, the cinema, has become pure entertainment and a mere distraction, instead of making a meaningful, moral, educational, or inspirational contribution to our daily lives. Perhaps Walter Winchell was right when he said that Hollywood is a place where they shoot too many movies and not enough actors. Anyway, in the mid-70s, when I started our film company, making a movie that mattered and could have an impact and that my wife and children would be proud of were far and away the main criteria. And making a financial blockbuster was a decidedly secondary objective. And against all odds, it worked. And I think it's because the movies we made came from the heart, and they were based on truth. And if you combine these two, you frequently can achieve both a commercial and critical success. In an embarrassingly short time, I became a so-called leading authority, which in the movie business is a term applied to anyone who has guessed right more than once. And I soon recognized that in business, as in life, you have to be very careful about being too careful, and that the chief danger is that you take too many precautions. Risk-taking is inherently failure-prone. Otherwise, it would be called sure-thing taking, and we know that doesn't exist. And in taking those risks, and in seeking the truth, I learned some of the cardinal rules of show business, which pretty well apply to any business. The first one is, if at first you succeed, try to hide your astonishment. Secondly, whatever business you're in, no matter what you're given credit for, somebody else, often many people, help you, and you need them. On each of the 60 or so films that I have been involved with, there were anywhere between 100 and 250 other people involved, and sometimes hundreds more. In the case of Gandhi, we had one scene with 250,000 extras, slight exaggeration. But over the years, all these films employed somewhere between 10 and 12,000 people just on the crews, and each of them played an important role, and all should be given credit. That's true of virtually every business I know of.